worked with Universal, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Sony Pictures, Fox. Is that all correct?
Yeah. We provide equipment, all type of event.
Have you guys worked in presidential debates?
Yeah, like during the Biden campaign, money coming in every month, it was just not enough to live out of it. A few Lakers showed up, and when Kobe showed up, people went wild. Even the paparazzi went crazy, and my lights fell, and one light fell on Kobe.
Well, Flo, thanks a lot for doing this. And today I'm actually playing one of my first away games on my podcast. So I'm at your office. But honestly, I'm very interested in talking to you because your industry is one of those industries that I have very vague idea about. I don't really know much about what you're doing. And as I was kind of joking with your wife, you throw parties for a living. That was my basic idea. But when I started looking into what you do, turns out you've worked with who's in the majority of industries. So let me just read the list of companies that you and your company worked with. So in automotive industry, those were Aston Martin, Bentley, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Rolls-Royce, Porsche. Is that all correct?
Yeah.
In sports, your company has worked with LA Lakers, LA Galaxy, LAFC. Still correct. In the entertainment industry, you worked with Universal, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Sony Pictures, Fox, and honestly, same thing goes for food brands, luxury brands, museums, and everything. So you're a freaking big deal, man.
Not really, man. It sounds glamorous, but we're behind the scene, So we're doing the dirty work for those nice brands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we kind of got into, talking about what is it that you actually guys do for those brands, tell me about yourself. How did you end up in the U.S. to begin with?
I've been in the U.S. for 20 plus years, 21 years.
Okay.
I played soccer in France. I was playing for a professional academy over there. When I found out that I wasn't gonna, sign a professional contract, I looked at what other options I had to keep on playing soccer and to keep on studying as well. And the U.S., that was back in 2003. So people in France barely knew about that. I don't think there was internet really in France. It was starting to
I know.
to be available. So all those information were not really hardly accessible. So only a few people had made the jump from France to the US to go to university and get a scholarship and do that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did then. I knew someone that had done that for track and field. I contacted an organization that was
recruiting
French athletes, whether it was soccer in my case, but tennis, swimming, whatever it was. And then they would contact universities here, negotiate a scholarship, and then you would go. So that's what brought me to the US was soccer on university.
You are somewhat of a unique case because obviously, a lot of people that watch this podcast, they're immigrants, but I would say probably over 50% of people, they came from post-Soviet Union countries. I understand their motivation because I'm one of those people.
Right.
I used to live in Ukraine. I was born in Russia, but I used to live in Ukraine, and there was just not that many opportunities there. Now, France is not being seen as sort of a third world country, right, or the country that's underdeveloped. So, what was your motivation for that? Because
Right.
It's not one of those countries that you usually would think about immigrating out of.
Right,
a lot of
right.
people immigrate in France.
Right.
So what was your motivation there?
That's a good question, and really, and that's kind of the story of my life. There was no plan. The main idea was in France, you cannot play soccer at a high level and go to university. You have to stop one or the other. You don't go to university and play sports or university. So it was, and I was on the edge to where I was not good enough to sign a contract and drop school. But I wasn't bad enough to where I was okay, drop soccer, go to school, because I was kind of in between too. There was a chance, a 50-50 chance. And so for me, the only reason why I came to the US was, I can keep on pushing, soccer and school at the same time and not have to give up on one, which in France I would have had to.
Yeah.
So that was really that. It was not job opportunities, it was very basic. It was okay, I want to keep on playing soccer, I want to keep on going to school. How can I do that?
Was school helpful at all? in this case, because when you start your own business, you're kind of on your own. You do your own
Right.
thing. You learn on the job most of the time.
Right.
Is that even helpful at all that you finished university over here, that you have a degree?
If I look at it directly, no. I've never had to show my masters. I've never had to show like any of my diplomas to get a job because I did what I did.
Yeah.
But like for me, I feel like it gave me like foundations. Like the work ethic. Basic knowledge in so many different areas. So it's more of like a background thing. It was not like super important as far as like doing what I do, but you develop routines. You do assignments. You do like it's more of that I think was helpful in getting into the business when you're on your own. When you have your business, like you're on your own, so you need some type of consistency, and you have to be.
But to be honest with you, I think it's less important for people like you because you're already very reliable. Like and knowing you, I can tell that you've probably been this way forever. University, I'm pretty sure didn't change you and didn't make you, an adult. Because like nowadays, one of the most popular courses in the U.S. universities is adulting. Like how to
Really?
do your laundry. Like if you have $100 budget for a week, if you spend $70 on Monday, is that a good pace for you or not? Like it's things like that would seem stupid, right? But that seems to be very important, and that's what people are interested in because they kind of come from their mom's bedroom to the college, and that teaches them sort of like a life skill.
Right.
You moved from one continent to another, so you already had those skills.
And I would say like Europeans, I feel like we grow up faster.
Yeah.
And so when you get here, like kind of have like you said, like you're not like out of your mom's bedroom, like you're like you've got your.
You need to have your
like,
shit together.
Yeah, early on, like it's a little bit rougher. Even in France, like people seeing it for like Ukraine or Russia, but like France is very similar. It's like it's way rougher than the US, like growing up there and like.
What's the custom over there? Like you, as a young kid, you would go to college. Would you still be usually living with your parents? Would you be moving out of your parents? Like, when are you supposed to, sort of like a common thing, when are you supposed to start paying for yourself?
Right. I mean, I feel like around 18, like people do get like and it's very different than here. Like you get a tiny room, but like what I'm talking about. Like a tiny room is literally like this is your studio. Like this is like like 3 meters by 3 meters, and you have your bedroom, your kitchen, your bed, your everything. And it costs you like maybe like $200 a month or whatever it is. But usually at 18 you leave and you get into something like that.
So let's get into actual industry. So tell me first and foremost, so I can understand, what is it that you and your company do?
We provide equipment for all type of events, right? So we it's a wide range. Like it goes from like tables and chairs, a full fabrication of like an event space, right? So we rent equipment, we sell, we custom fabricate for clients, like custom props, pieces, things like that, and we cater to anything from like a kid's birthday party, all the way up to a presidential debates stage and things like that. Yeah, like.
Have you guys worked in presidential debates?
Yeah, like during the Biden campaign, like we've actually provided stuff in New York. Like I think it was his last like live speech over there. I think was it like Beyonce was there as well, or like somebody like showed up during his thing, was with him like a week before the elections, and like we provided the stage carpeting for it.
Most of the people look at it and they're like, oh, remember that stupid thing, that person said, and you look at it and you go, oh, remember how we provided this carpet?
Yeah.
How like we see the life through the lens of what we do.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's just so funny.
But what's funny is like most people, like the biggest events that we do are not necessarily like the most like official. So for example, like the Oscars, everybody sees them on TV.
Yeah.
And so when I do a corporate event, a lot of those companies, they want to do it big, and they're like, I want to do what I saw on TV for the Oscars. But people don't know that with cameras, like what's for the Oscars is only like that big, but it's just zoomed in. So people think that it's 3 times bigger. So like company come to us and they say like, I want this, but like that big, thinking like this
And you
is
give
how
them
it
a
is.
price, and they're like, "Are
And
you
it's
crazy?"
way more expensive than
Yeah.
what's actually done by professionals for like what you see on TV.
Really?
You know, so it's what people see and what they think it is, and then
Yeah.
you know ask us to recreate it times 10 what it actually is. You know, like that's kind of like.
Man, it's so interesting. But how did you come across this thing? Because I mean, it's not necessarily the most common work. It's not necessarily the most common job. And first for you, it was a job because you didn't start the business right away.
Right.
How did you come across this thing?
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it's been like an evolution, right? It really started from, and I'll go back to your second question, but like it really started from just owning like a few pieces of red carpet, 2 lights, and a few like ropes and stanchions.
I already have one light, man. Can I
Yeah,
get in the business?
You're on your way, man. You're on your way. But so it's really like the kind of like that garage start where you know when you hear people
Yeah.
saying like I restarted like
The American dream
yeah,
thing.
yeah. And it was literally that, like having like a little 10 by 10 storage with like a few items that you kind of like keep on reusing for people.
Yeah.
And then you know progressively people start asking you for you know bigger and bigger stuff. And so at first you outsource, and then like you know eventually like you own your own equipment, and like you just keep on. We kept on growing.
Yeah.
In the directions that we were pulled into, so clients would ask for that, and we would, you know, like follow
Yeah.
them in that direction. And,
Yeah, because right now this place looks wild, man.
Yeah.
There's setup. Like what are we sitting in? Like what are these boxes? Chicago. See you in Chicago. What's going on here?
Yes, I mean that's a good example. Like so, the arch behind you was for the Ninja Turtle movie premiere.
Okay.
So we recreated, you know, like.
Like the tunnels where they live?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so
I love
like,
it.
that's how people got into the event space. Like that was at the Roosevelt in Hollywood. So we built that, and then like we built all the props. So I mean, it's full of props here. So things from the movie that we recreate for them. Yeah, those crates were for an activations for a trade show. For like a video game thing. That was for the city of Milwaukee, actually, like to attend a trade show in Chicago. So like,
really?
you know, because tourism.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like
yeah.
they attend trade shows in other cities.
Yeah.
They have
To
a
represent.
booth, right.
So interesting.
So yeah, it's such a wide range of events, you know, that we do. But and to go back to your second question, so it's my my partner that started the business on his own, and he's from Belgium.
Okay.
And we were neighbors. And that's the only connection, like that's the only reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today, was because we were neighbors, and he had the business already with just a small pickup truck, a few items, and you know, join forces. You know, like I just started helping him out with setups. Then I started doing sales, and then like we grew the business, and then we became partners on the fabrication business, and so on. So yeah.
When was it? How long ago was that?
Which part? The
When you got in the business, when you started.
This one was 2018, 2018.
Okay.
And the first one he started in 2005.
Okay. So the first one was rentals.
Yeah, rentals.
Right. So basically, when somebody would need, you know, to rent red carpet or chairs or whatever they may be, so that's kind of where you started.
Yeah, exactly. And so pretty much the jump that we did with fabrication was we really started growing in the rentals where we are doing. I mean, so yeah, all type of rental. But then clients start asking us for like custom pieces, right? They would want a custom bar for their events. They would want like a custom wall with TVs on it. They would want like things like that. And at first it was fine doing it under the first business.
Yeah.
But then it really started growing towards like really like pure like fabrication and like building rooms, like meeting rooms and things like that. And then it kind of like it became too much for like the rental business. Like it really sounded like we were just saying yes to everything, and we could do everything under that one umbrella. It's a completely different ball game. Like fabrication is like, you know, we needed to just have something that's like specialized in it. And so because we were getting more and more inquiry and we were doing, you know, a decent job at it, we're like, okay, why don't we just start a business that just focuses only on that, have our own warehouse, own team, own trucks, and so we separated the rental business and the fabrication business, and that's how like that came to life.
You know what I'm wondering is, I recently had an interview with somebody that runs a car business, and he mentioned his business model where he basically creates the word he used a lot was ecosystem. So the example was this, you know, he runs a car rental business where he rents cars, obviously. But he needed to repair those cars, and it would have been way too expensive for him to always
Right.
repair it somewhere else, so he had to open a repair shop.
Right.
And then when the cars would just outrun, they wouldn't be popular in rental websites anymore, so they would need to be sold. If he were to sell it through somebody else, he would be losing money, so he had to open another business where he would sell cars, right? And he kind of created this whole ecosystem around the idea of, just working with cars, and this way he is able to keep so much more money in the house.
Right.
Was that something similar to what you guys do? And is there a possibility to run two businesses that you have right now separately with a profit, or they need to be present in order to be profitable, both of them?
No, that's a good question, because actually those two businesses are very different, even though it's events. The fabrication business really focuses on like trade shows and building props for movies. So it's that. The other one is rental, and there's really not that much exchange between both businesses. But the first one, the rental, is exactly what you described. Like, so we specialize in branding, right? Because you have companies out there that just brings tables and chairs and like very like basic equipment. We have to have that, the basic equipment. So clients come to us for that. But then we brand, when we bring a bar, it's usually wrapped with the logos, the colors of the client. Same thing with like a DJ booth or a carpet or whatever. Like, we brand everything. Eventually, like, that means you have to print, right? It was costing us so much money to print elsewhere, and so we brought print in house, because of that. So we kind of like started bringing every single element in house, because clients would go somewhere else to like the big companies out there, because they had everything, and we're like, okay, we cannot just have that and not that. So it's like, okay, we're gonna start bringing furniture. It's like, okay, now we have furniture, but we need lighting and sound, because and so progressively we became like a one-stop shop, because that's what client wants, right? They want to be dealing with one person to produce their whole event. It's one way to to be able to satisfy the customer, as opposed to having them like reach out to a flooring guy, a printer, a lighting guy, a furniture company, like so many different people. So it's great, but then you're also in competition now with flooring people, with the printers, with like, so it's interesting, but that's kind of like the same concept as far as like trying to bring everything in house, so you don't have to spend money left and right to put your event together for them.
It's a very interesting concept, because I feel like, different strokes for different folks, right? Somebody will probably go around and try to find flooring person that will do it for $500 less. Somebody that would, embroider something, right, for $500 less, and they just gonna spend all of this time going around trying to find discounts here and there. And some people, probably bigger brands with more established names, they would probably want to keep it in the house, and they would want to bring it to somebody that will be able to just take care of this whole thing. So it's very interesting to see how you guys kind of found this niche where you could sort of almost cater to clients that are a little bit bigger.
Right.
Was it an idea to begin with, to sort of start working with companies that are a little bit bigger, rather than sort of just, for the lack of a better term, catering for birthday parties?
It's a mindset too, like that mindset of going, it's very European, like finding, like piecing pieces together. Like, I feel like in Europe, like, we don't mind working hard if we're going to get the better deal. Like, we would go and find the flooring guy for 500. We would then bring that carpet and do the print on it somewhere else. Then we would, do that and that. I feel like in America, people want to do it right. And so they'll give you more money, and they're like, it could be cheaper to go to 5 different places. But I'd rather pay you more and you deliver exactly what I want. Doesn't matter how you do it. I just want, this is the final product. Here's the money. Deal with it. It's I think it's a smart way to do it, because the problem that we run into is, you get a flooring guy that does one piece, then you get somebody like floor, somebody that's going to do that on top of the floor. And if you're the event planner, my clients, that means that that guy the flooring guy has no idea what's going to go on top, and then that guy has no idea what goes under his stuff. And the lack of communication, when they both show up on site, they're like, oh, I didn't know that, there was that.
It's your fault. No, it's your fault.
So when you deal with one person, if you deal with me, now it becomes my problem to make sure that, everything matches and everything's connected. And people in the industry see that, so that's also a reason why they would rather go in one place and have that one person in charge of making sure that everything,
Yeah.
functions together, as opposed to just like going to like 10 different vendors, nobody knowing what else is going on, and then
Yeah.
having like so many. I mean, and that happens a lot. Like I see it all the time, when people take that route. But
If you don't mind, let's get back for a second for the time when you first got exposed to this industry. How did it become a business rather than a job? Because I would imagine at first when you knew your neighbor was in this industry, he needed some help. He probably called you, hey, can you come out on Saturday, help me out, do this
Right,
and this
right.
and that. So it was sort of like a job.
Yeah.
When did it switch from being a job to actually being a business that you were in
Right. I
together
mean,
with him?
it took a while, and it was very progressive. Like there was no like massive investments or anything like that changed everything, right? Like, oh, we just spent 200,000 on the stock that just came
Yeah.
in, and then now we're gonna start pushing that. No, it was very slow, but very
Very organic, it sounds like.
right. And so it took probably like 6 years or something like that for it to really become like a full-time thing, because at first, I mean, it was like the smallest job
Yeah.
that you could imagine was
Did you have
what
to
we would
supplement
do.
yourself?
Yeah, I was working like 5 different jobs,
Yeah.
at that time, and like I would actually go down and break down for other companies, like at 2 a.m., like pick up stuff from an event and bring it back to their warehouse, and like among other jobs. But yeah.
When it started to become business, you mentioned that there was no big investments, that it kind of happened organically. But when did you start feeling like this is something that is not just something I do kind of for a moment, but something that I could stick around for the next 5, 10, 15 years? When did it start feeling that way, that there's potential here, there's a possibility to kind of make a living out of this and not
Right,
just
right.
pay your bills?
Right. Well, I think like because it was like a consistent growth, then you're like kind of like that, like sky's the limit kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
because like we would get more equipment, more clients, like everything was like aligned and growing. So I think when something's growing, you're just like you're connecting with it, and like you're investing your time, and like you're seeing yourself like, okay, like if this year was like that, next year is going to be better and better.
Yeah.
And so you just like, I think like organically, just the fact that everything was going the right way, you're invested 100%. Before you know, that's your life, like
You
that's
kind of
your
balls deep into this, and you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But was the business always making money, or were there times when it was sort of something that needed clarification, something that you weren't sure about?
The fact that there wasn't any like investments to begin with, like there was no credit card, there was no debt, there was no like heavy fixed costs, there was no warehouse, there was nothing. So the business always made money because there was nothing owed to anyone.
Yeah.
But the money that was being made was very, little.
Yeah.
That even though there was money coming in every month, it was just not enough to like to live out of it. And so like at first you would get a phone call, like I've had months where it was like one phone call in the entire month, a $150 job, so that was it. And then you had months where like you have a job for $20,000 and you're like, oh shit. And
Now we're talking.
yeah, and like you're like, okay, well, if I can start, lining up more $20,000 jobs,
Yeah.
and there's no reason why I can't, because when I do it, it's going well. The client's happy. The client will come back, and so it's kind of like that thing that was encouraging. Is even though it was not happening every time, you would get like pieces that would, put like not stars in your eyes, but like, and then we would do like one like big event a year, like the BET Awards after party, $100,000 production, like which back then was like incredible. But then you're like, okay, it's there's one a year, but we're doing it well. Like there's no reason why we can't, And then you're like, oh shit, imagine if I have like 5 of those a year. So obviously $100,000, it's not the profit, it's just, what the invoice is to the client. But, so seeing, and I feel like that's LA for people that come here, like you see people being successful, like you see potential in your business, like you see all that, and that kind of like motivates you and like, fuels you to like, to go out there and like, get more clients and like try to do your best. And
Coming back to the growth of your business, because obviously it started with your friend, then you joined him. When you guys started growing the business, what were the first hires? Because, when people start their businesses, a lot of the time, what I find as a common denominator is they're kind of doing everything on their own. I'm calling clients, I'm getting the phone calls, I'm installing the booth, I'm doing everything, right? So when was that point in time when you realized that you needed somebody else other than you and your friend to help you out, and what was that person's job? What was that person doing?
There was one specific task was like graphic design, because we receive like files and artwork from clients. So, and that's something that none of us could really do. I mean, I guess we could have learned like the basics, but so graphic designer was like always like the one person that we had to have. But aside from that, like you were saying, like we are driving trucks, setting up, doing sales where we were setting up, and then what's interesting too is then you need drivers and like you need, like people to work, but then you have no budget. So you get, just like everything, like you're on a low budget, so you get people that are actually not good, and then
so somebody wouldn't show up, so you're back to driving truck again.
Or somebody's doing it wrong, or like you don't trust them, so you have to double check the truck, and you actually have to do the work twice. And like for the longest time, we just didn't have the means to get the right people, which comes with being able to offer like a decent pay. And forever, like we just couldn't do that. So we're just like struggling with friends, and like I've brought my soccer team out before, like because on like a big job, I was like a 2-day setup.
I didn't know about that. Tell me about it.
It was a 2-day setup, and by the end of day one, there was no way the setup was going to be ready on time for that's back when we used to play against each other, when I played with the Frogs, with the French team.
You're serious?
That team came out at
so the
night.
Frenchies showed up?
Yeah, like 12 guys showed up.
You joking?
To start, helping out. And
that is so cool.
And then I remember then being able to sneak them into the party. I would tell the client like, hey, like I need to have some staff on site to make sure that the light doesn't fall or anything like that. And then like I got them in, and it was actually a cool party. I think like David Beckham was there. Like
oh, you're serious?
Like a few soccer players were there too, so that was fun. But yeah, I mean back then it's kind of like you do what you got to do to make it happen. And there was many situations like that where, my dad, when he came to visit me, has worked with me in the truck and like, carrying like stuff and like...
Do you reminisce about shit like that? Because I feel like when you grow your business and, you become more legit, you become bigger, you kind of run out of those moments, and you sometimes look back at the time when, the shit would go down like that, right? But that would at least give you some stories that you would remember.
Yeah. No, I mean, exactly. But there's like goods and bads with each time, right?
Yeah.
Because now looking back, it sounds fun, but when you're in it and you're stressed, and like a lot of time you also like you did not price out the project well, so not only you're struggling, but it's like your margin is just like shrinking because it's taking you longer. Like there's the fun that comes with having no experience and just having to make shit happen with nothing. So like there's definitely some of that, but there was also like so much stress and like not uncertainty as well with like where was the business going, and like so it's both. Like I wouldn't say I miss those days just because of there's making like fun. It's also enjoyable now to have like a qualified team like to be able to do like bigger stuff and like properly and like with the right amount of trucks and like scheduling and like
Talking about the qualified team, how does your team look like right now? How many people work over here?
So we have between two companies, I would say like 15 full-time employees.
15 full-time employees. That's a big operation.
Yeah, I mean for us coming from like a
man in a truck.
Yeah, exactly. It's great, but obviously when you look elsewhere, it's very small. But yeah, 15, and then we hire like freelancers based on like specific projects like So yeah, we do work with freelancers as well on top of the team.
How does the amount of work that you guys do nowadays look like? Do you guys track how many events you run a month, a year? What kind of metrics do you guys even use in your business?
We don't really track, to be honest, because it's not necessarily like a good representation, because I can do 12 birthday parties
Yeah.
for $500.
Right.
It looks like 12 events, but
Yeah.
it's just that. And I can do one event, one movie premiere,
Right.
and that's, so it's not really in terms of like of quantity, but to give you a number, like we'd probably do about like 20 events a week.
20 events a week.
Yeah.
And you guys cover, because I know you were just in Kentucky, I think, some other cities, states, you're kind of all over the place. Is the majority of the events that you guys do here in LA, or is it at this point in time all over the place?
So with the red carpet systems, with the rental company, 95% of it is in LA.
Okay.
We go down to, to San Diego, up to San Francisco, Vegas, but that's pretty much that triangle. With custom, with the fabrication business, we do trade shows mostly, so we travel like all over. So it's the opposite. Maybe 5% of our jobs are in LA.
Really?
And 95 is out of state. And like now we have something going on in Miami. We're going to Wisconsin. All over the place.
Now, when we talk about, growing business, I feel like, and especially, for companies like yours that have been in a business for last 15 years or so, I feel like COVID was one of those times that kind of companies either making it or breaking it, right? Throughout that time. How was COVID time for your industry and for your company in particular?
Yeah, so COVID was events, gathering people, that completely stopped, right? Which is exactly what we do. It's not like, we can kind of,
It was just a complete halt.
Right. So at first there were like no gathering of 500 or more. So okay, that's one part of our events that went out, which was early on, right? Not when it got completely shut down, but like 2 or 3 weeks before was that. Then 200, then 100, then 50 people.
Yeah.
And then, completely at a stop because there's nothing else.
What did you guys think at that point in time? Did you think that you were fucked completely?
Yeah, honestly, back then, people were not really optimistic about, people would say it's never gonna be the same.
Yeah.
Again, right?
Yeah.
It's we were so we don't know what the fuck was going on. You know, we felt like you'd shake somebody's hand and you'll die tomorrow. It was kind of that. So there was events will never be the way they were. It's gonna be remote. It's gonna be online. Yeah. I have friends that work in the same industry that started developing platform, so you could attend an event from your computer and be in the venue because it really looked like that was the future of events, was that.
So they kind of went digital.
Right, exactly, yeah, completely. Yeah. And so, but then that did not happen. And so those people, for example, that were actually ahead, lost a lot of money because developers and everything to do that.
Yeah. And because it's not their industry.
Right.
That's completely something else.
Right. Plus, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? There was a few, people company tried to do things online with their employees but it didn't really last long because things resume. It's almost as soon as the door opened again, we were right back to normal. It took maybe 2 weeks. 2-3 weeks, and people were so over being at home that we went from really being afraid of anything into fuck it, let's just get together and drink and do that. And we actually had our best year post-COVID.
Oh, really?
As a business.
2023.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on, when everything was going so well right before, and you're
because it was almost like people were catching up.
Yeah.
All of those events that were delayed.
Right.
Nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden people were like, all right, so now it's a go.
Yeah, exactly. But then to go back to your initial question, because that time period is almost 2 years though.
Yeah.
Or a year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah, how do you keep the lights on?
So
for
we
2
did
years?
have to pivot, and we were doing plexiglass dividers for schools. So private schools make money based on how many kids sign up.
Yeah.
So in order to get parents to be comfortable for their kids to go back to school,
they need
to
show.
Here is what we're doing. Yeah. We have air purifier, we have this, we have that.
Yeah.
And then each desk would have a plexiglass shield. So each kid would be sitting at their desk and have a little, 3-way
Honestly,
things.
Even though it was just 2 years ago, I'm imagining it in my head and it just looks like futuristic thing. And I'm very thankful that it looks like futuristic thing, but go on.
Yeah. And so imagine we did thousands of those, because a school will have, between kindergarten and middle school, high school, every single desk will have it. Same thing if you're like in your biology class, like you know you have like bigger tables, we would like have like you know dividers everywhere. Same thing for the teacher's desk, and like so we custom made plexiglass shields for like all type of desks and offices and things like that, specializing in schools. Because we try to go the route of like grocery stores and gas stations and stuff, but people would find it online. Like there was like some cheap solutions online that were good, but because those had to be custom made, people couldn't find it on Amazon, for example. So like that's what we did. We didn't make money out of it, but that enabled us to keep our staff paid and employed and busy enough to, you know, because the first weeks of COVID, you know, it's like you're just sweeping the warehouse and it's clean now, but you know, that's all you've got to do. So it was the cleanest warehouse we've ever had.
Or a COVID year. You know, it's interesting because I kind of see this as a common denominator. You know, companies that are challenged try to find this pivot moment to even keep the lights on for a little while until things get a little bit better. Obviously, you guys have gone through this, and we spoke about COVID. That was obviously sort of one-off worldwide event that I can't even talk about the challenges of your business and mention COVID because it was a challenge for everybody and everybody's business. But now when you run your operation, what do you find the most challenging part of this business?
I mean, I think like the nature of our business is, it's almost like if you're playing sports and you have a game, like that's an event. It's always different. We're always doing something different. So each job has its own challenges. So it's hard to like, we're not really repeating, like we don't really, I mean, we do have processes in place. We're custom making, you know, based on what the client sends us. So they have a vision and we make it. And so every single time you're like, shit, I hope that arch is not gonna, you know, collapse. Or like, what if the wind conditions are this? What if the ground is that? It's uneven, it's grass, it's so you always try to like anticipate what the you know, outside factors can be that would like mess up your setup. And so it's really like every single job has so much stress because it's a one-off thing. Like we haven't done it before. It's our first time doing it because it's never been built. You know, that's the client's vision, and they insisted to, you know, to have it done that way. So it's challenging from like a, you know, from an architectural standpoint, from like, you know, an engineering standpoint, like, and so it's really like the stress that goes into it and not knowing how things are going to be. That's something that keep you up at night, and that's something that can really be resolved because it's the nature of the business of doing like unique builds, you know. So that's,
you know, because you compared it to sport, and I think it's a very good analogy. And I feel like with your rental business, it's more like running 100 meters. So you prepare, but you know what you're going to be doing. So you can't control the environment, but you know what you're going to be doing because nobody's pushing you. You just need to do one thing. But with a custom made, it's almost like playing soccer. Like you still train, but you come out and, you know, and it rains and it's windy and, you know, the opponent is this versus that. So it's so many factors that you can't even take into consideration until you're actually there and you start putting it together.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it is like things will go wrong. And you knowing that,
and
like,
that's the mindset,
right? Exactly. Like. So it's like being able to adapt on site, and like, oh, the TV is too heavy. They were supposed to bring a TV that's that big, and like the wall is not holding up, or like, you know, like there's always.
How long did it take you to realize that shit will go wrong? How long? Because I mean, you come into this business as a young guy, right? And you're like, oh, this didn't work out. I need to do this better, right? That's sort of normal to think about it this way. Oh, I didn't think about this. Like, I need to be better next time. How long did it take you to be like, nah, bro, we've done everything we could have done and things will go wrong. We just need to keep resolving. How long did it take you to like sort of switch?
Well, I don't even know if I got to that because I'm very, and I think like it's a good thing in our business, like obsessive about like making sure that no matter what it takes, that for the clients, everything will be perfect. And so it, you know, whatever it takes, meaning like if we have to be up at night and work like another 12 hours until like 8 in the morning for when the clients show up for it to be perfect, like we'll do it. So there's never a point where like, you know what, I've done my part. It's always like it has to be perfect. And so I don't think I've gone to that place of being like, okay.
Do you think you ever will?
I don't think so, and I think it's
Would
a
you
good
like
thing.
to?
No, because that's also, I feel like the day I will be like that, that's also the day that, your motivation is not
Yeah.
as high.
You can just give it
And
to somebody else and outsource it to
right.
somebody that actually still has
Yeah,
that.
kind of like same thing as soccer, like
Yeah.
the day you don't want to go and like do your like fitness, the way you start being like, I'll just play on the weekends and
Yeah.
I don't really need to do all what leads to. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like when you start declining.
Yeah.
And like same thing with the business, like if you don't have the mindset of like, I'm not living it the way it is, even if it's not my fault, like I'm gonna do whatever it takes for it to be perfect for the client. That's really what differentiates us with the rest. So if I fall back if I go into that mode of being like, things will go wrong, I need to be okay with that. I mean, yeah, you work on it, right?
To a
Like
certain
you
extent,
panic
yeah.
less, you stress less, like you gain experience towards it, but you still have that, it falls on me and I need to fix it and like I need to make it perfect, and like, that kind of mentality that really like keeps you up at night.
We mentioned sports a lot and, how we play soccer. But what I'm wondering is, if you were to sort of metaphorically think about it, how much benefit did you take and how much advantages and how much of a personality traits did you get out of sports and out of college? Like, what contributed more to you as a successful business person, college or sports? And let's just say if college is on one side, sport is on the other side, what would be the percentages? Where did you get the most benefits out of?
Like sports, like 99%, like it's...
So 1% to college, 99 to
Right.
sport.
I mean, it's really much more of a, because the skills you can learn, right? The
Yeah.
skills you can learn, but that mindset is something that you have or you don't have when you walk into your business, when you start, and that mindset. So it's the hardest thing because you have to
Yeah.
have it as you go, and that was developed through sports. And so yeah, most definitely. Because at the end of the day, like what I was mentioning about college earlier, like it brings you a background, it helps you
Yeah.
like. That's things that you've also done with sports. And again, it depends. Like, 'cause sports is different for everyone. Like some
Right.
people just, even at a high level,
Yeah.
they're gifted, they don't need to work hard, and they just do that.
Lazy but talented,
Right,
just like Nike
right.
T-shirt.
And it wasn't my case, which
Yeah.
back then you could be like, I wish I was faster, taller, like, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then now the fact that you actually had to work for everything that you've got is something that you're able to carry and apply to your business.
Yeah.
And so I do, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned some challenging jobs that you had. What do you think is the most challenging project that ended up going right?
I I have one on top of my head, but like, take forever to explain it.
You don't have to say the name of the company that
right.
maybe had it, so we don't spill the beans.
You know what's interesting is like at the end of the day, like you go through hell for it to look good. Just like sports, when you see gymnastics or you see like those sports and it looks effortless.
Yeah.
But the pain that they have doing it is present and is insane. Like with our job is the same thing. Like you have to make it look effortless. The client has no clue that a day before, like you didn't know how the structure was going to stand up. Like, you had failed like 30 times and like you had to remake it or whatever. And so I have jobs like that where like nothing was working on the day before of the setup. Like the doors were not like sliding into the walls without scratching the graphics, like had to reprint graphics overnight, like go to Home Depot at like, find a Home Depot that's open at, at 1 a.m., like drive like 30 miles out to go find that one Home Depot and like, to get a new door and then hope that thickness is going to be like enough to clear. I mean, just things like that. Like,
man, you deal with stories all the time. What do you feel like the weirdest story that you've dealt with dealing with this stuff? Because not only that you deal with people, but you also, because you deal with people on both ends. You deal with people that, may or may not show up for work. You also deal with people that, order this to look a certain way. And it's not only people, but it's also, the production and all of this stuff. What's the weirdest thing that you've dealt with where even with all of the experience, you as a person that's been in the business went, what the fuck is happening right now?
There's like so much shit happening on every single job. Like it's usually like, it's mostly funny when it involves like celebrities and like things actually happening. Because at the end of the day, you can do everything right? So my job is, if the event starts at 7 p.m., my job is finished at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
and I can go home.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I tried to attend the party and go to the party. Now it's like as soon as my party is over, like it's over, like I'm out. But then once my job is done, the real events start, the actual, and then that's when like still things can go wrong or like people, you know, like,
Wow.
and so sometimes like you have clients that spends like, you know, 500,000 on DJ equipment. And like the DJ that's supposed to be at the party is like super picky and like wants that turntable and that turntable and that mixer and like you do not own it. You have to go like, you know, like around town to find what he wants. And then on the actual event, so the DJ is about to come up on stage to start mixing, and you just have like a celebrity show up on stage. Like in this case, it was like Jamie Foxx, like just show up on stage, grab a mic, and just start freestyling. And that DJ that made the client spend $500,000 on DJ equipment, like never played.
You had no idea.
Never mixed, like never got on stage because Jamie Foxx, who was a bigger name, just came on and decided to like freestyle and do something. And so that guy like just never got to play, and like his equipment was just right there sitting there.
Are you serious?
Client spent 500,000, and then you know, like Jamie Foxx was just freestyling and doing some things, and yeah. So and that happens all the time, like celebrity stuff where like it's funny.
We're still in LA, you know, so there's got to be celebrity stories.
my first ever event when we were like, you know, a tiny business, like. Was at a watch company, and then a few like Lakers like showed up, and when Kobe showed up, people went wild, and like even the paparazzi went crazy, and like my lights fell, and like one light fell on Kobe.
Oh.
So imagine it was my first job, and like that's kind of like the worst thing that can potentially happen with like liability and stuff, like one of your lights falling on Kobe Bryant. And that was my first event.
Oh my God.
And so, but things like that.
But look, you're still here.
Yeah.
All of these years later, you're still here. And I guess you've done something right after that.
There wasn't much to take from us back then. So, you know, I got lucky it happened 15 years ago more than today. But yeah, I mean, it's a wild,
How do you see the future of your business? What would it be heading to in the next 2, 5, 10 years? I mean, you're not going anywhere. You're in this business so deep that you're staying. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's interesting because that's not something to be taught in school, but I have zero plan. Like I'm someone that I feel like I'm so competitive that on a daily basis, like I'm fully connected to the staff, to my clients. I hear what's going on, and that's kind of like what dictates the next move. But I'm not really forcing it with like a 2-year plan or a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. And like, because I feel like we need to switch constantly. Like we're always like kind of like following what clients are asking for. So like, for example, for this business, like we started just doing, you know, one type of trade show booth, and then now we're doing movie props. I mean, you know, and sometimes I feel like having a plan kind of like narrows down your opportunities because like you tend to look at that as like, oh, this is my goal. When if you're actually like flexible and open, like
very nimble,
right? And so we do storage, you know, which is like a great business as well. So we store what we build for clients. Something that I would have never thought of, that would have never
Speaking of that whole ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's, you know, like the goal is to be, you know, as convenient as possible for clients and to provide services that they do not have to outsource to somebody else, or like, you know, because when I build something, then they'll need the measurements and the weight and this to get a quote from a storage facility or like, you know, anything like that. And so anyway, so like don't really have a plan as far as like where I want it to be. Like I'm more focused on like the daily growth, whether it's, you know, the team, the equipment, and that's kind of like based on like on demand and on what's being asked. So
you don't strike me as a person that hates doing what you're doing every single day. So it probably helps that, you know, it challenges you, it entertains you to a certain extent, that, you know, you're not in the position where you hate showing up for work.
Right. Well, and it's funny because at first that's kind of what it was, right? Because being in that industry was never a dream. It was not a passion. It was not a goal, right? I kind of like fell into it because I needed money and my neighbor was doing it. And then like, so, and for a while, like, you know, you kind of like, you're doing it just because you have to do it. Like, you know, it was not a love story. And, but then you get to that point where it gets cool because now you're managing a team. And like I said, like there's a challenge associated with each job. So it's like it's almost like you're on a mission. Like every single job is a mission that you have to successfully
Yeah.
achieve.
Yeah.
And that's what I like. Like more the actual like industry that we're in is like that challenge of like, okay, here's what we want to do. Like make it happen. It's on and it's always different. And
Yeah.
it's teamwork. It got fun. It wasn't at the beginning, and then it got fun just because of like the size that it became, and like
Yeah.
what that means in terms of like management and yeah.
You mentioned that it kind of started being fun when your role changed a little bit. Can we talk a little bit about the evolution of your role in a company and in this? Because that's a long way from
Right,
loading the
right.
truck
Yeah,
to operating it and making decisions and determinations and
Right.
communicating with clients. How did it change throughout the years from the person that was loading a truck to?
Right. I mean, it was like the person that was loading the truck and setting up and picking up and unloading back into the storage, and then I started doing sales. So then which at the end of the day, like that's what sets us apart from like the big companies, because the person that's doing the sales is also the one that's driving your truck and the one that's setting up and the one that's picking up. So like there's no miscommunication because you only have like one person involved in the entire process. When in a company, you have a sales department, you have a warehouse,
Yeah.
you have a job order that just gets printed and given, but there's usually like some like specific notes about like okay, bring that, but yeah, and that's where it gets lost in translation. And when you
Yeah.
work with a bigger business, there's so many issues on site
Yeah.
because of that. And with the way we started, because we didn't have a choice, like that person you had on the phone was also that person you had on site. So yes, sales and that, and then I mean then you start growing a little bit, and then I became still I would drive trucks, I would do sales, but then you have to do marketing, you have to do HR, you have to do accounting, you have to like you start wearing
Yeah.
like 12 different hats because you can't afford to have an accountant, because you
Right.
can have an HR department and marketing. Like okay, I went to school for that, so let's try to use the little bit that I remember from it. And,
Right.
so it's very basics, but you're kind of like progressively like involved in every single aspects of the business. And then you start going to networking events to try to bring in more clients, and you try to. I mean, at first when I was doing sales, I was literally going on Rodeo Drive with a brochure,
Really.
going to the front and be like, hey, this is what we do.
Just knocking on the doors. Hey, if you guys need an event.
Exactly. And usually it's funny because people that work there are not the decision makers, right?
Yeah.
And everybody was excited, like, oh yeah, red carpet, like yeah, fun.
Yeah.
And then you come out like excited. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
new clients. And like, I've never ever had anyone call me back.
Really.
I would go on Robertson, I would go on Rodeo Drive, I would go like to the big brands and
Yeah.
stuff, and like never worked. And so like even like the sales technique changed, over the years of like just
Yeah.
being very raw and like having nothing, and then like you have an iPad and you can start like showing things
Right.
around, and then yeah.
I mean, it obviously you show that you change with times, with the changes that industry brings. If you had one thing to share with the flow that was loading the truck back in the day, because you've learned so many lessons through
Right.
running this business and being in this business altogether. If there was sort of one advice that you could give Flo that was loading the truck, what would you have done differently? What would you suggest that person do, if anything?
You learn the most from your mistakes, and so I feel like there's nothing that I would take back, that I would do differently, because even the things that went wrong, there's so much that came out of it. And so if anything, like I wouldn't really like give an advice or do something different, because I think I had the work ethic, I worked hard. So when something would happen, I would like bounce back, or I would think through it, and I would, and I've done so many mistakes, right? But I feel like they happen for a reason, and so I would want to do them again, because
Yeah.
I don't think I could be where I'm at without all the mistakes that I've done.
Yeah.
So I don't think I would actually do something different, because at the same time, like when you start from the bottom, like you don't know what it's gonna look like. So it was good not to know, to have that uncertainty that, hey, am I gonna be able to pay my rent at the end of the month? Am I gonna, and like that thirst of, like going out there and making new clients and making sure that you're listening, because you're like, shit, I need it, So I'm glad that it went like the rough path of like not having anything like handed to me. I like the process of like having to earn like every single penny that came along the way, and the mistakes and everything. I feel like it's part of the story, and like I would do it exactly the same. I think, yeah.
Man, those are the words of a person that's not only wise but also happy, and this is exactly how I know you. Very happy person, very composed, not only on the soccer field but apparently with your business as well. And I honestly think that this is a great example of sort of how to look at the experiences we've had before, because a lot of people want to change things up. A lot of people would say, oh, I wish I knew this, I wish I knew that. But it's a hypothetical question anyway.
Right.
But if you don't think about it as hypothetical, you would have so many regrets.
Right,
well,
right.
I could have made the million 3 years ago and not right now. And it's the constant cycle of just regretting and just not being happy.
Right,
and,
right.
and you're the opposite of that. So I honestly very much appreciate you as the person that shared about this industry that I had no idea about.
Thanks, man.
And also appreciate you as a friend, man. So
Yeah,
thanks a
same
lot
here,
for doing
man.
this.
Yeah,
and
of course, my pleasure.
I really hope that your business goes in a direction that you will go. And I hope that you're going to keep enjoying it the way you're enjoying it right now. Of course, we're going to put in a description all of the names of your companies and the ways to contact them. But I just, from the bottom of my heart, I'm very thankful for your time.
Thank you, man. Thanks
And
for having me, man.
I'm really glad that I have you
chatting
as
with
a
you
friend.
as usual.
Love it.